Ronnie.
I think people thought there we weren't still alive for a little while, didn't they?
Are you alive or at least awake? That's the main thing. You are such a jester, you are, young man.
But we are still alive, unfortunately, for the listeners.
Right. Welcome to Still Alive. And as you can see, we are. So there you go. Maybe we should just finish it now and not risk it, Ronnie. What do you think?
Well, yeah, because it's
taking a bit of a risk.
It takes a lot out of us doing these shows, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, we have to wake up from our afternoon nap and everything.
Yes. Then have the evening one straight afterwards.
Oh, there's Michael with one of his usual shock horror. We're still alive. We are indeed. Hello, Paul. Paul is in the house. So is Deb. Colleen is here. BC. Who else? That might be everybody so far. Andy's here. Great news about Andy is that we're trying to get him a new computer because he needs a big fuck-off computer to do all this filming that he does. Because I mean, I know the system he uses, and in terms of the intricacy of all these kind of images coming, you end up with a huge, absolutely huge file of lots and lots of, and so needs all that, and we're very close to getting him one as well.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. That's
look at this. Yes, of course. Well, you're just a bad person anyway, Colleen, so don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Hey, Ronnie, I had a funny day. I got scammed. I got scammed on Facebook. You know our mutual friend. Well, I mean, we won't mention her, but she dates back to the ALF days. She used to do some jobs for the ALF. Should we put it that way? And
yes. Yeah.
Leave it at that. And also, I think that when the homes were running dry, and I came up with the idea of the Rescued Animal Sanctuary Fund, I do remember going to see her to see whether she wanted to get involved with that. It's really funny, isn't it? Because you just Zoom with them now or something, and I think I had to go from Liverpool to Devon or something to do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, she contacted me and said, "Do you know about this new thing? You can get loads of money." And so I smelt something wrong fairly early on, and it ended up that somebody had stolen her profile. Now it wasn't kind of hacked, the profile. It's just that they did a separate one of the same. Yeah. So see, you can tell Ronnie's still alive because he's now drinking tea. So
I've got tea. I've got tea, and I've got my. If you can see it, it's Mr. Pussy Magnet. My cup.
Well, you got lots of cats there, haven't you?
Yeah. So there we go. So I've got a very appropriate cup here to drink my tea out of. Yes, I think what people need to be wary of on Facebook is that you get these kind of scammers that will impersonate one of your friends. They'll steal their profile, they'll steal their profile picture and everything, and they'll set up an account in the name of one of your friends, and then they'll try to scam you. Louise had it. Somebody tried to do it with Louise when she was doing a fundraiser, and sent a message to all the people that donated to the fundraiser. Said, "Oh, can you send a bit of extra money to this? To this address?" And I think they said it was for a vet's bill or something, but it was a complete scam. So you have to. I had to message all the people to tell them it was a scam.
Oh, so they're getting clever, aren't they? Do you know what this one's about, Ronnie? Do you know what this is about? The woman who accosted me. Did you see the film? I was doing a Facebook Live, and this woman came up, and she kind of went veganism, which is often what they do in Ireland for some reason. They just come up and go veganism, and I go, yeah, veganism, and then she goes, "What's that?" And I said, it's a philosophy, it's, blah, blah, blah. And then she had this really peculiar kind of accent. She said, oh, when you're vegan, you can't wear leather. She put it that way. And I said, well, it's not that we can't, we won't. Anyway, this went on for a little while. And eventually she just looked at me and said, well, don't you look dead? You look really
And did you say, no, I'm still alive?
No, yeah, I should have. Yeah, I wasn't thinking fast enough to do that. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
They always look at your shoes, don't you? I was going to have "fuck off" written on my shoes, because what they do is they look at your shoes because
she had a fag on, but I think she had a thing of water. But it's it's worth looking, because
it was probably gin, Roger, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's how I do it. Yeah. Right. Anyway, folks, we better get on with the show whilst we're still ticking here. Now, Ronnie, you wanted to talk about a nation of animal lovers, and obviously it's in connection to the major claims making of Animal Rising, and so you wanted to really have a go at them, rip them apart, tear them to pieces, say that they've done nothing right ever. So that's what you wanted to do, wasn't it, Ronnie?
Well, I think nothing could be further from the truth, to be honest. I mean, I'm generally like a really big supporter of Animal Rising. I was of Animal Rebellion. I did a video promoting trying to get people involved in their actions against the dairy industry last September.
And they came out. You did your top 3, and they came out.
I did my top 3, things for animal liberation of 2022, and
well, you're still alive back then, anyway.
And Animal Rebellion came in at number 1. I mean, and of course, my wife Louise was involved with Animal Rebellion. She's involved with Animal Rising, and they've been great in terms of her, because she's a wheelchair user, and their inclusivity is really excellent. That they'll kind of do their best to enable people with disabilities to take part in their actions, which is extremely rare for a group that carries out direct action. It's kind of almost
really unheard of. That is true, actually.
And that is absolutely excellent.
That's the real.
And there's loads of like really, really, really great things about them. And I think it's kind of, I think what they're doing is a really important development in terms of direct action, because if we kind of sort of trace the history of direct action, I suppose direct action for animal liberation, or at least direct action to protect or save other animals in this country, really dates back. Apart from the odd incident they had before that of people acting individually, it kind of really dates back to the 1960s with the formation of the hunt saboteurs, and the hunt saboteurs still going today. But it's a very specific type of action that's aimed at saving a particular types of animals. Foxes, hares, whatever, mink. I think they hunt during the summer and stuff like that. And then of course you had the Animal Liberation Fronts, which we were both involved in.
No, I deny that. I had nothing to do with
it. You have no knowledge of that,
no.
Officer.
What are you talking about, officer?
Is that what you told the police? Was it?
Yeah, it didn't work for some reason.
No, it didn't work with me either. And of course, but I think that in a sense, the type of direct action that Animal Rising do is kind of even more important than the ALF. And the reason I say that was because, if we want to achieve animal liberation, we've got to really get a considerable number of people, and I'd say a substantial minority of people, really, to actually believe in it. We're never going to achieve animal liberation while only a tiny minority believe in it, as is the case at the moment. So therefore, it's hugely important to educate other people to be opposed to the oppression of other animals by humans, and for those people to actually believe in and support animal liberation. Otherwise, we're never going to change anything in any really big way at all. And the problem with the ALF is that we didn't do that because we directly attacked the industries that were oppressing other animals and sought to put them out of business, sought to cause them financial loss. I mean, obviously, we directly rescued animals as well.
Yeah, but Ronnie, I'd say that we were getting there. It's just that everything kind of ended up against us in the sense that we weren't that bothered about the press when it at the beginning, and of course there was lots of animal liberation activities, and then it switched to economic sabotage. So by the time we kind of latched onto the idea that we could talk to the media and therefore the public, what we had to say was much more difficult because there's a lot of damage in that being done at the time. So we didn't really. It never really kind of came to fruition because if you like, events were against us.
Yes, I mean we weren't. I mean, educating the public was really low on our list of priorities. I mean, we basically just wanted to put people out of business, didn't we? And there was some success in that. I mean, I think billions of animals were spared because of ALF actions, but I thought there was no hope really of that type of action ever achieving animal liberation because we didn't have any interface with ordinary people. We weren't really interested in ordinary people. It was like a direct war between us and people that oppressed other animals. That's kind of all it was. And the ordinary people were just on the sideline, and so that we weren't going to achieve, or we weren't going to bring about, the necessary change in the way that ordinary people think and behave that is required to achieve animal liberation. We were never going to do that. So it was always that limitation on what the Animal Liberation Front could achieve. But I mean, fast forward, kind of several decades, and we've now got forms of direct action that have much more of an awareness raising effect in terms of the ordinary public. I mean, obviously, Animal Rebellion Out, Animal Rising is one of those, but we've got others as well that need to be mentioned, and that is DXE. DXE is one of those. Especially they're kind of mostly active in the USA and I think the West Coast. They've rescued animals from farms, and that's got a lot of publicity, and that has done a great deal of awareness raising. And you've got Meet the Victims. That's another one that's over here, where people do similarly, these kind of mass occupations of farms, and once again that gets a lot of publicity, and that creates awareness. And I think that's a much more important form of direct action, because it kind of actually helps to bring about the situation that we need in order to achieve animal liberation, which is raising awareness, which is educating people, and which really, is educating people to go vegan, because we have to educate a substantial number of people to go vegan, not just in terms of their diet, but in terms of the philosophy of veganism, which is a philosophy that is opposed to the exploitation and oppression of other animals by humans. So educating people to go vegan is really vitally important, because it is ordinary people at the end of the day who, it isn't just through the effect that the lifestyle changes and dietary changes those people will have in terms of reducing demand, say, for animal products. Not just that, it's the way that those people will behave politically, because if we're ever going to, if we're ever going to kind of get system change, right, then we need to have a completely different sort of government, and in order to get that, we need to have a lot more vegans elected to Parliament, and we need a lot more vegan politicians, and we need a lot more people to vote for them, and we're not going to get that unless we hugely increase the number of vegans. So that's the fundamental thing that we need to do if we're going to achieve animal liberation. And I see that
more potential now, isn't there, than
yeah.
before?
Yes.
Even when I mean, when we were spokespersons, we were kind of not really getting where we could have gone, you know, whereas now they do. So a couple of things that came up in the comments. Yes. Well, first of all, you mentioned DXE. I wonder if people in the chat, do they still adhere to this boycott veganism idea, which they came out with before?
I don't know. I had a video chat with Wayne Shung. Is it the guy that?
Well, he's the one who wrote the boycott vegan.
Yeah, well, you see, he didn't seem to be, you know, during that conversation I had him, which is like available. I think it's on YouTube. Oops, we've got cats scrapping here. I think it's because it's around about their food time. That's why. Because during that conversation, no, I mean, I said the same as I've just said to you, and he didn't raise any objection to that. So I don't really quite know what.
Well, that's pretty good. And so,
yeah,
the situation we're at then, I think, is expressed here by Andy. They're a great direct action group. Well, probably the only one. Well, I think people would dispute that, but it's only their language I take issue with. And then this issue is quite interesting. This kind of, well, there's nothing stopping another group doing the same, but with stronger, i.e. different language. But before we continue, I want to kind of challenge ourselves a little bit here, in the sense that aren't they going to say, well, look, our messaging as it is the best because we've researched it, we know what we're doing. I mean, they've probably looked at the psychological research, they'll have looked at sales psychology like a lot of these big groups do, they'll have looked at pop psychology. It wouldn't surprise me if they've not had Zoom talks or trainings with the likes of Melanie Joy and Tobias Leonhardt, who will tell them, you know, to go on this kind of easy track, as it were. So they might be thinking they're doing grand, and there's nothing that they need to change.
I mean, that's possible. I mean, obviously, I don't know whether or not that's happened. But I think that you know, some of it is. I kind of find some of it problematic. I mean, a lot of what they say is great. Is absolutely, you know, really spot on. But there are kind of certain things that I'm not happy about, and I think could be improved. And one of them is this nation of animal lovers. You know, this thing about you know, we are a nation of animal lovers. Well, the problem with that
is that's on the basis that you say it's just an outright lie.
Well, the problem is actually that's not true.
Yeah.
And you've got an organization here that's really highly principled. You read through all their kind of, you know, their sort of principles. You know, they're very highly principled, and then they're coming out with this huge untruth, because there's no way. How can the United Kingdom be a nation of animal lovers when 8 billion animals are killed every year for people here to consume, right? And that's only that aspect. How can that, you know, how can that possibly be the case? It just can't be. It just can't be.
Yeah, I don't understand why they don't say, well, it's said that we are. There's a myth that we are, and
yeah,
you know,
it's claimed. You know, there's a claim that,
you know, kind of prove it.
It's a claim. It's a claim that.
But it's central to their claims making, Ronnie. So there must be a reason why they do it, right?
But the point is, it isn't true. You know.
No, but that doesn't mean there's not a reason why they do it, though, right?
Well, whether or not there's well, I think it is. I think, you see, most people probably as individuals think they're animal lovers. Like you know, I've had people come up to the store, you know, when I'm doing a vegan store, saying, "Oh, I'm an animal lover," you know, and it turns out that they, you know, they're a meat eater. You know, they think they're an animal lover, but like you get talking to them, and you know, they're consuming animal products. So they're kind of not an animal lover.
we're back to that cultural thing. I mean, in terms of cultural speciesism and in terms of the ideology of animal welfare, those two statements are not a contradiction. I know they are for vegans, and I know that we will want them to become a contradiction. But in terms of right now, those two statements are not in contradiction, because animal welfare promises that you can have non-cruel use. That's its main promise, right? And that it would eliminate all unnecessary suffering. And so therefore people think, well, I can be against abuse, but not use. I can be against cruelty without being against use. I can eat them and love them. There's no contradiction culturally with that statement.
Yeah, but objectively, there's a huge contradiction, because, like, even if those animals are reared on, live on golden cushions, they're still sent off to the slaughterhouse at a fraction of their natural lifespan. They've still got to be, at the end of the day,
it's the values that people are taught, Ronnie. They're socialized into those very the kind of you tell kids, don't be cruel, and don't kick the cat, and stop pulling wings off flies and this kind of stuff, but you don't say don't have this sausage.
Yeah.
See, the two things culturally are separate things.
Yeah, but it makes people think they're animal lovers and refer to themselves as animal lovers, but objectively they're not. That's the thing. That the true situation is that they're not. No matter what they think, it isn't. It actually isn't true. So it's for me, it's not right to kind of repeat that untruth. And use a different form of words. Yeah, use a form of words like, we consider ourselves a nation of animal lovers, so why do we allow this to happen? That would be okay, because that isn't an untruth. It's a lot of people do think they're animal lovers.
Yeah, many people would claim that. But that would be okay, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and that would be fine. It's just to say we are a nation of animal lovers. That's not true. It really isn't true, and it kind of really grates with me that isn't true. And it's kind of out of kilter with, the rest of everything they seem to express, which is like, it's very, very principled. So why have a big lie at the center of it?
Well, again, you see, it's not quite. You see, I mean, Cliff Grant sent us a video today, and this was actually what happened. He was asking someone if they were against animal abuse, and they said yes. Immediately started talking about, because he said, well, what is animal abuse? Immediately started talking about kicking cats and things like not feeding them, neglecting them. Those kind of like acts of omission in terms of their well-being and everything. And then as soon as he switched to other animals used for food, that was a completely different matter. So she was a direct reflection of the culture that we're in.
Yes, yeah, but you see, but we need to challenge that. It's not good to kind of go along with that, and that's the thing that we have to challenge.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Obviously, I agree with that. There's no doubt that I would agree with that.
So yeah. I think that is kind of something that kind of really, really grates with me when anyone says or claims that we're a nation of animal lovers, whoever it is. It's just is not true. Just not true. And that was a good comment, I think, by Deb about even dogs and cats. We're not even a nation of dog and cat lovers. Because there's so many are put to death because there are no homes available for them. For instance,
not to mention vivisection,
and not to mention the ones that are go to the labs and all that. So even in terms of dogs and cats, so somebody individually might think they're a cat or a dog lover, themselves, and kind of that just in that limited area. Of their own. Yeah, I'm sure the dog or the cat they've got at home, I'm sure they do feel love for the same as they would, and that animal is regarded as a family member, and loved as they would love another family member. I'm quite sure that's the kind of case, but that doesn't make them, like, in general terms.
No, this is the answer to that. It's not about them lacking love.
Yeah, it's a lack of respect.
Limited fear. We want them to think about respect in a wide sense, not in the limited sphere that they apply their idea of what love is.
It's not a personal, this isn't about, because the love that people might have for the dog or the cat that they've got in their home is like a personal type of love, isn't it? It's a personal love, but that personal love can't be applied universally to other animals that you don't even know, that you've not even met, that you're never going to come across. And what can be applied universally is respect. And like, as Andy quite rightly said, that's what we want, and that's what we need to promote.
What do you think of that? All right, Colleen, you've challenged us.
It depends on the it kind of depends on the type of love. I mean, you can say, oh, there's this kind of universal love and all that, but I don't know. I'd kind of rather use the word respect. But what I'm saying is that, like, somebody can love an animal they have in their home, but not have respect for other animals outside of that. Somebody can love their own dog and cat that they've got, themselves.
I mean, it's also the root cause of things like racism, because they feel as though they got some empathy and love even for their race, but it's kind of like, well, if you're then there's a lot of research that suggests that a small difference within humans can create a massive moral difference. And if you've got kind of moral distance, that can create a problem. I mean, they did experiments where teachers told blue-eyed kids that the brown-eyed ones weren't very nice people and everything, and there ended up being terrible amounts of prejudice and bullying and that going on. And so a small difference. I mean, anybody who's experienced bullying, either at school or elsewhere, will know that it's often based on a little tiny difference. And another part of that is that if you put human beings into a situation which is even familiar to them, like, for example, you put some straight people into a gay bar, that small difference would be enough for them to feel incredibly uncomfortable. And so we are in some senses, we are kind of limited species in that sense. I think this one's interesting in the sense that an interesting response to this declaration of I'm an animal lover is, oh, it's great to meet a fellow vegan. Yeah,
that's very good, actually. That's very, very good. I might start using that myself, actually.
But going back to Animal Rising, then the problem, this shows the problem of their claims making is because they wouldn't say, we're a nation of animal lovers, isn't it great to be in a nation of vegans? See, they wouldn't do that because
no.
They know that's not what's.
Yeah, exactly. So we're in a nation of people who think they're animal lovers, but that doesn't mean that they are, and so it shouldn't be said that they are, because that's not true. And I think that's the problem with that. I can see what's happening, that they're trying to, like, you can kind of get people to make the connection. I mean, kind of, we do this. I mean, my local vegan group, we'll do stalls at dog rescue events, dog rescue fundraisers, where there's a lot of people there who care about dogs, and even not just their own dogs. There, because they've got a rescue dog, rather than going and giving money to a breeder. A lot of them are concerned about the problem of all these dogs, unwanted dogs and everything. And we'll go there because they have a kind of like a compassion for one type of animal. We're going there to say, well, look, you've got this compassion, respect for this one type of animal, but all these other animals aren't any different. They're all individuals as well, and it's trying to get them to, to extend their circle of compassion or circle of respect to other animals. But you've got something to work on, because at least those people care about some animals, you see. And I think maybe this is what this is, they're trying to do, is to say, look, most people kind of feel love for some animals. And so, what about all these other animals that are really no different, that are having, experienced all these terrible things? Shouldn't you be caring about them as well? I can kind of see where that's coming from, but it's just that to say that we're a nation of animal lovers just isn't true.
I want to come back to this thing from Deb. I just want to switch to this one for a minute. I'd say respect comes before love. And so I suppose if somebody came up and declared themselves an animal lover, one response would be, but do you respect them? Which would be an interesting.
Yeah, and then they'd probably say, what do you mean?
Yeah, well, that gives us the opportunity to explain it. Now, yes. I don't know whether you remember, but there's a famous Reagan speech from 1988, and it's an anti-vivisection rally. And one of the speakers, apart from Reagan, at the same rally, said something which was very powerful at the time, but would probably be confusing in the modern music movement, because, and this is built on what Deb is saying here, he said, don't call me an animal lover. That's the same as calling me an N-word lover.
Yes, yes.
And that was based on the fact that obviously the white people in the civil rights movement were called that pejorative in order to kind of do them down, as it were, and say, you're just sentimental, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, a lot of people would say, well, if those vegans, they're just a bunch of animal lovers. But they're not using that in a positive way at all.
No, they're using it in the same sense. And this is, yes, I think this is very good from Deb. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's it's about respect, isn't it? It is about respect. It's not about love. And it's about respect, and it's about wanting justice, and it's about wanting liberation for other animals.
I mean, clearly we need to have a representative from Animal Rising, because given the fact that it's so central and they keep doing it, so it's repeated, it's a central claim which is repeated in press releases. I mean, in fact, we've even got an example of that. I can bring it up if you like.
Yes.
But because of that, it means that there must be some utility in it from their point of view. And so it's almost as though perhaps we're missing something.
I suspect. I mean, it'd be good to do a future show and maybe have some Animal Rising representatives, on the show to
we almost lined one up for this one, but it didn't work in the end. But this is what you picked out, right, Sarah McCaffrey, right? Now. This is a press release, people. So you understand, it's got end at the bottom there, which is the way you finish a press release. A shop worker and student, one of those disrupting the track, said, "Now this it starts off really good, whether it's for food or for fun. Now that's an excellent start, right? Because they've gone straight for the food thing, which is to contextualize the fun part of it. So that's absolutely excellent." And then another part, they always talk about this, the broken relationship between other animals and ourselves. And then there it is again. We're a nation of animal lovers, right?
Yeah, but that's not true. That's not true. I also wonder
why aren't they saying it's claimed that we're a nation of animal lovers?
Yes, because that would be fine. Because that's actually true, because that is claimed, but it doesn't state that we actually are. But
there's got to be some utility in it, Ronnie, that we're not seeing.
I really don't know. I really don't know. But
what about people? What about people in the chat? As you know, we don't make you pay to put your comments up on the screen. So, what do you imagine the utility will be? Has anybody got any ideas? Because we don't, do we? I mean, we're kind of like just a couple of word differences would improve this from our point of view, right? Whereas they're going, well, look, it's one of our central claims. We've done it right from the start, and we continue to do it. So that it must have some utility for them.
But whatever the utility of it, still doesn't make it true, does it?
No. But I mean, that bit in a way, in terms of claims making, might not matter, because it's kind of like, you know, by saying this, X follows. But what is that? I don't know where it is.
Yeah. The other thing that I kind of I have a bit of difficulty with is this idea of a broken relationship with other animals, or a broken relationship with nature, but particularly the one to do with other animals. Is if you talk about broken relationship, that implies if something's broken, it means that at one time that was unbroken, at one time that was like whole, and at one time was okay. And I don't believe that was ever the case. I don't think there was ever a time when humans weren't the oppressors of other animals. Not really, unless you go right back to kind of, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of years. You know, it implies that one time everything was hunky-dory between us and other animals, and then suddenly that became broken. But I don't believe that was the case. And so once again, this is, you know, I find that a bit problematic, you know, this idea of the broken relationship.
Yeah, I don't get it either. So the utility is working on a false premise that people identify with that model. For some, it will work. For most, it will not. See, I don't know what it says to anybody when you tell them we're in a nation of animal lovers. I don't know what people are supposed to take from that sentiment. Kind of, oh yeah, we are, right? And then the idea possibly is for them to work out the broken relationship by going, yes, that's right, we are. And then, oh, blimey, what do we do to them? Maybe it's as simple as that. It's possible, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I suppose that is possible. But nevertheless, you know, this is something that kind of isn't true. And that's the problem I have, that it's an untrue statement, like hugely untrue, massively untrue.
It's interesting, isn't it?
And it could be easily be said in a different way that isn't untrue. That's the thing, and really convey the same meaning.
What about that last sentence? That's not. I'm not exactly wedded to that one either. We need to find ways of loving animals that don't hurt them.
How does that? Well, that's just. I mean, I don't see kind of how this makes sense at all. I mean, the thing is,
well, it's our SPCA talk, isn't it? That's what that is.
Basically, you know, the person making this statement, this is pretty much, I would say this is like an official statement kind of from them, that they've kind of put in quotes from this particular person. I think this is kind of, and they wouldn't have used that as a quote unless it was something in an official press release, and unless it was something that they totally approved. So they've approved that actual line, that sentence. You know, we need to find ways of loving animals that don't hurt them. But the two don't go together. You don't, you know, you can't surely love an animal if you hurt that animal, or if you contribute to the harm of that animal. So you're not actually loving the animal in the first place. You know.
Well, so sociologically, that one line is quite complex, because they might be suggesting that people think that they are animal lovers at the same time they take part in hurting them. So that might be reflected what BC is saying here, trying to be posy here. Good use of the word limits, but perhaps the utility could come from the sentiment of an aspirational statement to encourage people to reflect on their attitudes and actions towards other animals. Yeah, so that's what I was trying to get at. And
I think that same effect could be achieved without saying things that aren't true, that aren't true. Yeah, without saying things that are untrue. I think the same effect could be achieved with a different form of words that was truthful.
If you did a survey, Ronnie, with your little clipboard, and you said, do you regard Britain as a nation of animal lovers, you're going to get a lot of yeses to that, aren't you? I know you're going to say, yeah, but that's not true. But
yeah, but it's not true. But you don't perpetuate that lie. You don't perpetuate a lie. It's not true. You know, like what even though people say it, you know, it doesn't. You know, there's no way that
it's probably juxtaposition, isn't it? In the sense that you go, oh, we're a nation of animal lovers. Here's the Grand National, and so many horses were killed, and probably the idea is, without actually saying to people, is to get people to go, well, how does that work then?
Yeah, but you could say in a nation that claims to, you know, in what claims to be a nation of animal lovers, you see that form of language doesn't include an untruth, does it? Because it is true that like a lot of people kind of somehow think that we're a nation of animal lovers, even though we're not.
Yeah, this is interesting too, isn't it? And the fact that obviously all this you know, it revolves around the Grand National so far, as it were, and there's an issue in that. But you know, say we were talking about laboratory rats. You know, the idea is to go, we want to save these rats. Well, we are a nation of animal lovers. That's not going to work, is it?
No, I mean it might work with beagles, and also you saw with the horses, you know, like kind of, you know, in the category of animals that people might claim to love, horses are included in that, aren't they? Mainly because people have horses to ride on their backs, which
they shoot horses, anyway. Don't they?
Yeah,
remember that song?
Yeah. You see, so I think, you know, horses are kind of with many people in the same category as cats and dogs, as like a kind of companion, you know, an animal companion. They're in that they come within that category, whereas animals like pigs.
You think Courtney's got it right here? This might be the answer. Saying that claim to be animal lovers gets people's backs up,
but no. Well, I think that saying in a, you know, in an, yeah, you could say that it don't need to say that in terms of individual people. You're talking about like the nation, aren't you? You know, you know, in a, yeah, you're talking about the nation. You're not kind of talking about individual people, and they're not. They're saying that a nation of animal lovers, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, that's an interesting one. I mean, that would be down to a subjective interpretation of that, then, wouldn't it? But I mean, I could see that some people might go, because if they do get their backs up with your kind of opening statement, then they might not get through to the end of it. So that might be kind of what's been said, which could be. I mean, it's kind of plausible, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's just using a form of words that doesn't include an untruth. Really, that's kind of what needs to be formulated, isn't it?
A nation of animal respecters. We're a long way from that, Benny. So,
well, that's what we're aiming for, isn't it?
Well, yeah,
you know, absolutely.
And Benny is drumming his way towards it.
Yeah. Yes.
So, So do you want to show some of the other stuff that you wanted to show?
Yeah, there are some, you know, there are some other bits. I think it's probably important to kind of look at, you know, some
okay. Which ones do you have in mind? You've got how we achieve change, or our principles and values.
Well, I think So how we achieve change. Can have a look at that. This is from the Animal Rising's website.
It sure is. Okay. Right. All right.
You may have to read these out, Roger. They're quite small, unless you can zoom.
Yeah, I looked at that and I couldn't. I can do that maybe.
Yes, it still makes it quite hard for me to see.
Okay. Well, I might have to read it for you then.
This is the.
So number one, it says open animal rescues and farm occupations. Now this one, I know Andy's going to love this. Spotlighting the stories of animal suffering through exploitation. So that's a bit of clever kind of use of of language, because why isn't it just spotlighting animal exploitation? Because that's really kind of interesting, because it almost like suggests, well, if they're not suffering while being exploited, this is welfareism, then it's okay. That kind of the implication there. But whether anybody besides jaundiced people like Andy and I would read that into that, I don't know. But you could certainly read that as, well, if they're not suffering through when they're being exploited, they're fine. But again, that's the promise of animal welfareism, that, well, we can exploit them, we can use them, but they don't have to suffer. That's what we're promised. That's what animal welfare promises, right? And then it says, sorry, Ronnie, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I know, yes, because even if those animals didn't suffer, it would be still wrong to exploit them. The exploitation itself is kind of the fundamental wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, but this is one of the major fault lines in the entire movement's claims making, is it implies that if you can get rid of the suffering, the exploitation is not so bad. And of course, that's reverse of what Reagan would say, which is that the fundamental wrong is the exploitation, and that the suffering makes the fundamental wrong worse.
And of course, it mustn't be forgotten that all those animals are going to be sent off for slaughter, no matter how good the conditions are on those farms. They're all going to be killed at a fraction of their natural lifespan. And even if there were no suffering involved in that whole process, their lives are still being taken from them. And that is a fundamental wrong. Even if no suffering, if you could conceive of a system where no suffering occurred in that, it would still be wrong.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I don't know whether well, I think you were there when we saw where the premiere of Andy's film Animal Rights We're Getting It Wrong. And look out for the director's cut, which will probably be within the month, I would think. But Lee Hall is one of the people featured, and she was saying that people are so concerned and upset, as you would expect, with the issue of animal suffering, that it leads them to make welfare claims. It's as though it becomes so overwhelming that they're forever focused on animal suffering, and they're always encouraged to focus on that they're then liable to make welfare claims. Or, as I would say, even if they don't or think they don't, they are then starting to the discourse is taking place within the welfare paradigm, and that's also bad as far as I'm concerned. We need to show people how to think outside of that box, because that box is what they think in all the time. Going back to Cliff's thing, she was thinking within that box. I'm not an animal abuser, but don't talk to me about food animals, right?
Yes, yeah. But I want to say that there is a very positive aspect to this number one as well, which is the next part of it, about open rescuers handing themselves into the police, taking accountability for their actions. All that. I think that's kind of, I think that's a really good aspect of it, because that really contributes to the awareness raising. Because, like, back in the day, we, we would never do that. With the ALF, our aim was to get away, and a large part of the planning of our actions was determined how to get away. In fact, that often involved the most planning, not doing the actual action, but how do we get away undetected afterwards? You see?
Yeah, but do you remember? I mean, Newkirk was interviewed once, and she said, "Well, they've got the sense not to hang around and get arrested."
Yeah, but you see, because our actions weren't done with the same aims. Our actions were done to cause damage to those companies, to close that place down, to put them out of business. That was kind of what our actions were aimed at. And so we wanted, and often the actual criminal penalties for the actions we carried out were very high. You'd face long sentences of imprisonment for many ALF actions, so therefore you'd kind of not really want to hang about. But in terms of like raising awareness, if someone does hang around to be arrested, if someone doesn't try to get away, I think that has a really strong effect in terms of awareness raising.
You mean in terms of their arrest and then their subsequent trials and stuff?
Well, the fact that those people are saying, "Here I am, I've done this. I don't consider I've done anything wrong, and here I am," and I think that sends out a very strong and kind of positive message. Whereas the message we sent out of the public, well, there's these people that did something and then kind of ran away and didn't want to be identified.
Well, this is where it all comes back in a circle, Ronnie. They go, the public go, we support these open rescues because we're a nation of animal lovers. They are. We've cracked.
Yeah, but so therefore it doesn't help to reinforce that, does it? In the claims making, that basically, something that kind of we need to come on to is like other aspects of the messaging, and that's something I'll come on to later. But this idea of people...
one problem with this, Ronnie, is the fact that it's built on almost like the Gandhian idea of clogging up the judicial system. But first of all, you don't have the numbers. But secondly, when people are on bail for months and months and months, that puts them kind of out of action, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think there is that practical consideration, and I mean that there are animal rights people who are on bail for multiple things because they just kept getting rebailed, and obviously there is a cost to be incurred, through all that. Whether people may get fined, they may get they almost certainly will get costs awarded against them if they're found guilty. There's the travelling expenses to and from court. There's it's an expensive business, like in monetary terms, and then there's also the kind of the threat of imprisonment in some cases as well. There is that, but what I'm really talking about, sort of kind of aside from that, really, is the effect of, like, if you I mean, these days you can't get away anyway. You can't get. I mean, this is one of the reasons why ALF type actions have kind of pretty much died out, because you can't get away because there's so much surveillance around now that the chances of being caught for something these days are far greater than they were in our day because of all the surveillance that goes on, and CCTVs and stuff like that, which to a large degree we didn't have. Going back, how long ago was it? 40, 50 years. That wasn't there. So you can't really get away with stuff.
It was a while, Ronnie. It was a while.
It was a while. You see, but I think this sends that this is very strong. If people are there, like when the people handed themselves in after they rescued the beagles, that makes a very, very strong statement. I think that resonates very in a very positive way with the public. There's these people that say, I've done nothing wrong, I'm prepared to hand myself into the police. I think that sends out a very, very strong message, much stronger than if you run away.
Isn't it true though, Ronnie, just to kind of push back on that a little bit, is the fact that hasn't things changed for Patty Mark? I mean, Patty Mark kind of really was the originator of open rescues, and so they would turn up at these farms. They would all have kind of like branded kind of t-shirts like Open Rescuer. And then the farmers wouldn't want to prosecute them, right? And because of the publicity that they were going to get. And then I think what happened then was the authorities thought, well, we can't have that. Otherwise, it's just going to encourage them to do it more and more and everything. And so we'll prosecute them. And so they then start to get you big fines and your potential.
And obviously this is something that kind of, I mean, there've been some, animal rights people, I think, charged with conspiracy in relation to the actions. Well, it was Animal Rebellion at the time that took the actions against the dairy industry back in September. I think there's been some conspiracy charges laid against people with that. And of course, that's the kind of, that can take things to another level. But yes, but that's, that's kind of, in a sense, that's a separate issue. That how do you deal with the problem of all this kind of, the mounting fines, the mounting costs, and all that, and kind of how, what is the sustainability of this? That is an important question. But it's kind of, I'm just really focusing here on this, the fact that people are kind of, up front with, yes, it was me, and I'm here.
Yes,
And
I get all that. Yeah, there's no argument there.
Yeah.
Before we move on, BC is looking for a fight here. Seen this? I see that Singer is doing a roadshow with the re-release and update of his animal rights book. He's just doing that to pull our
Did he do
chain.
I didn't know that he did an animal rights book.
Well, he didn't. No, that's the point. Let's move on then to number 2, because this is interesting for some of the reasons we've said. Mass trespass onto animal racing events. So they're obviously planning on doing. In fact, they've announced that they're going to be doing more, which on the face of it is a weird focus.
Well, you see, I'm wondering if it would have been better, really, in terms of creating fundamental change, in terms of changing the culture, which we need to fundamentally change the culture of our society if we're going to achieve animal liberation. I think in terms of that, I wonder very, very strongly whether it would be better for them to stay focused on the food industry, to stay focused on animal farming and the fishing industry. Because, I mean, first of all, by far, the number of animals that are killed are in relation to that industry. I mean, with horse racing, I would say it's probably about 10,000 horses a year, and that is mainly not horses that are killed at events like the Grand National. That's not the horses that are killed on the courses. It's ones that are killed either before or after their racing careers. Either there's a large number of horses are bred for racing, and I think
isn't this where the broken relationship comes in, Ronnie?
Well, I don't know. I don't think you mean in terms of breaking a horse.
No. Just because horses are kind of loved. I mean, like, we're going to go on to the next sentence in a minute.
But there was never. But even with horses, there was never any time. Like horses, you go back decades. Horses have been oppressed by humans. Even riding, the first time a human jumped on the back of a horse, that was oppression. That should never have happened.
Well, they've been used as weapons for years, haven't they? So
should never have used them, and horse racing is just like kind of the development of that idea of that these animals can be used for whatever purpose we want to use them for. I mean, horses were used in war, weren't they? And
yeah, I mean, look at those images of the horses with the massive gas masks on and stuff.
Yeah, they were used in war, and think of how just because humans are idiots and want to fight each other, just stupid lunatics, want to fight each other, right? Then other animals get dragged into that, and and suffer and get killed as a result of like some madness that humans want to do, And it's the same with the pigeons. They used the pigeons, didn't they, to carry messages, and loads of them got shot down, and it goes on and on and on.
The passenger pigeon. Do you think it's something to do with, you see, the point is, if people say, okay, well, let's not go for animal agriculture and the flesh industry and the dairy industry because that's so entrenched, they're then usually, if they're going to pick out a single issue, they wouldn't go to horse racing. They'd go to like circuses or fur. Something that you could characterize maybe as low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, but has the action driven has the type of action that can be carried out driven the choice of this? In other words, that occupying a race courses is kind of is something that's kind of maybe will get publicity, especially if something like the Grand National or the Epsom Derby or something that will get publicity.
It's live on TV. That might
it's live on TV and all. But you see, the thing is that if that, to me, the most important thing, we're never going to change. We're never going to get fundamental cultural change in terms of bringing about animal liberation unless we educate a substantial number of people to go vegan, right? And so if that's what, if you're going to do awareness raising to achieve that, or as part of trying to achieve that, then it seems to me the best way of doing that is to take actions against the industries that are involved in animal farming and in fishing. Because the thing that, if you want to change people fundamentally, what is one of the most fundamental things that people do in their everyday lives that contributes to the oppression of other animals? And that is the food they eat, isn't it? That's the food they eat. That's, like most people don't go to horse racing. Most people don't even bet on horse racing. You get a lot more people having a flutter at the time of the Grand National, but most people do not go to or bet on horse racing. They have no involvement in it whatsoever. But in terms of consuming animal products, almost everyone's involved in that. See, so, and if you change people's mind in relation to that, in relation to the food they eat, that's a very, very fundamental thing with people. And so you change that, you're likely to change. You've got a really good chance of changing that person's whole worldview and their attitude to animals as a whole, other animals as a whole, if you do that. And so it's vital, and it's much easier to do that. It's much easier to put out the go vegan message, right? If you're taking action against animal farming or against the fishing industry. It's much harder if you're taking action against something else, like horse racing, and so I think that really I'd kind of like to see them just concentrate on the food industry. But in terms of the messaging, you see, obviously in the past that Animal Rebellion have done that. When Animal Rising was Animal Rebellion, they did that. They took action against McDonald's and they took action against the dairies, and these were excellent actions that that got loads of publicity and stuff. And then there was the actions where the milk was poured away and all that. But the problem I had with that was the main message was about the climate. We need to switch to a plant-based agricultural system in order to combat climate change. Or combat
what about this one, Ronnie? You probably studied Animal Rising more than I.
No, you see, now this is something I'm coming on to with this, and that's this is I've hardly seen it in the messaging. You see, the thing is that what they led with was this is the causing global warming, and we need to do rewilding and all that, and that's excellent. Of course we need to do that, and of course, animal agriculture is I believe the major contributor to the climate crisis, and the fishing industry is a big contributor as well. In fact, it's more than all aviation. But you see, it's kind of who are the primary victims of animal agriculture? Who are the primary victims of the fishing industry? It's the animals.
I found my Zoom button, Ronnie.
So, oh, brilliant! That's excellent. Well done. You've learned something. That's great. That's really good. That it's the animals that are farmed and the animals that are dragged out of the sea. They're the major victims, and it's a bit like saying, say for instance that back in the days of the slave trade, say for instance that the slave ships were damaging the environment in some way, right? And people launched a campaign against the slave trade, saying we need to end the slave trade because these slave ships are damaging the environment. And you think, well, hang on a minute, wait a minute. Surely the main reason for ending the slave trade is because of the oppression of the slaves. Isn't that the main reason? Why aren't you saying anything about that? Why aren't you leading with that? And it's the same thing. The number one.
Well, wrong. Some people would just say whatever reason they do it, as long as they do it, won't they?
Some people would say some people would say that, but it's like, but that's because people who say that don't have faith that talking about the primary wrong with something is going to be the way to make a difference. But I don't sort of have that lack of faith. I think we need to say it like it is. Like it's kind of like it's like the emperor's got no clothes sort of situation. Why are we slaughtering this huge number of animals, other animals? I mean, it's 250 animals a second are killed to feed people in Britain. 250 animals a second, right? And so if you look at, like, compare it to horse racing, within 40 seconds, as many animals are killed by the food industry, to feed people in this country, as horses are killed in a whole year because of the British horse racing industry.
Wow.
40 seconds. And so, to me, I'd like to see the focus totally on this the major problem, and the messaging to be right. This is to talk about why are we killing all these massive number of animals for food when we don't need to, when we can live perfectly healthily on a vegan diet. Why are we doing this to other animals? It's totally wrong. And secondly, also, it's causing devastation to the climate as well, and that is also killing lots of other animals. Animals that live in the wild, it's killing lots of them, and also it's a threat to our own very survival as a species. That kind of messaging, right? And then to say people as individuals can do something about this by going vegan. But you see, it's never this thing about, like, this neglect of individual change. When it's individual change drives system change. And so we have to encourage people to make fundamental individual change, because then that leads to system change, because it changes the culture.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. Let's go back to this, see if this one works. It's probably too small, isn't it? So let's go back to this then. So the last part of this one is probably all their worst claims making all stuck together.
Yeah, that's the same as was in that other statement.
Yeah.
Find ways to love animals without harming them. That.
Yeah, so as a nation of animal lovers, it's about time we put these cruel, outdated practices under the spotlight and bring them to an end. There are more fun ways to spend a weekend than watching other animals die. And as a society, we will find ways to love animals without harming them. So you've got that problematic thing.
Well, you see, the word outdated is a problem, because that implies that, like, at one time that was kind of okay, but because we're sort of in modern ages, it's no longer okay. Well, that was never okay. It's never been okay to even get on the back of a horse. It's never been okay.
What about this strange line about more fun ways to spend the weekend? Yeah, but people going to watch the football, unless they're going to Forest Green Rovers, what are they going to be having at half time and all that? Because so it's again, the fundamental is not there in this one. It seems to be, I don't know, just seems to be a little thing that's missing there. They go on to talk about supermarket sit-ins and stuff. So
yeah, you see,
you're okay with those, right, Ronnie?
Yeah, well, the supermarket sit-ins have been to do with, like, the meat industry and the dairy industry. The restaurant sit-ins have been to do with that. But the problem with that is, once again, it's pushing plant-based future, right? When the primary thing would be about, why are we slaughtering all these animals? Why are we oppressing all these animals for food when we don't need to, when we could all be vegan? And that's what individual people should do. Is like, we encourage you to adopt a vegan diet, because this is how you as an individual can help put an end to this. As an individual, you can do something important to help end this. And that's what the messaging should be, or what I'd like to see it be. But I think the idea, these things, the roadblocks. I think the roadblocks, maybe it's probably to do. That's kind of what they did with the actions against dairy industry and McDonald's. And I think, yeah, attention grabbing actions, that's great.
Well, that wasn't a roadblock though, isn't it? Because of all those, the least the least popular one is the roadblocks. Because
yeah, I think that I mean where I think they've done roadblocks has been, you know, it's been like blocking the road outside a dairy supplier. And
I mean,
stuff
can you
like
imagine if you're a SAB and you're on the way to a SAB and there's a roadblock for environmental reasons? You'd be a bit pissed off, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, I think they've done sitting in the road in London. I think that did happen. You know.
Well, they blocked motorways and that, didn't they? Or was
yeah,
that...
I mean, I wouldn't be pissed off. I mean, if I was driving along and, you know, people were blocking the road for environmental reasons, I'd understand why they were doing it, and I'd be sympathetic to them. But like most people, obviously aren't, because like, you know, then they're going to miss Love Island, aren't they? If you're sat in the road, you know, it's all something like that, isn't it? So, you know.
Well, interesting, because Lee brought up those 2 dogs that were killed, and the guy was tasered, and of course that's created a lot of chit chat, even within the vegan community, and of course, you know, it's not as though other animals are not being, you know, gunned down by the second, as you just said.
I mean, yes. I mean, it was absolutely terrible that happened. It's absolutely appalling. But like, we need to remember that for all those people that are shock horror about that, and then, you know, go back to eating their, you know, steak dinner or whatever.
There's no shock horror though. I mean, it wasn't that. Well, it was many years ago. The Met Police were described as institutionally racist, if you remember. And then more recently, you've had a few sexual scandals involving.
It probably follows. It probably, you know, suits.
Yeah. So this is just a logical domination. I mean, you know, if you're going to be racist and you're going to see women as commodities, then there's nothing going to stop you shooting a couple of dogs.
Oh no! I totally understand that. Yeah. But the people that are most people making a big fuss about that, they're going to be eating animals that have also been shot, but shot with a captive bolt gun in a slaughterhouse.
So these actions are these kind of conversation starters. So this is the bit we would fully. This would be the bit we would probably fully support.
Yes.
But because of that, this is where the claims making has to be completely spot on and consistent. Right now, they've got consistent claims making. We've seen that. It's just that it seems to be a bit weird to us, really, in the sense that it doesn't seem to make that much sense. Now, whether this is the legacy of the fact that they were Animal Rebellion, and before that they were kind of part of exile, but then they pulled away, and maybe they're still going through process of change. And also, I think one thing that has probably impeded them is the fact that the Grand National was first in terms of their big actions as Animal Rising. I don't think that helped them really, you know, because it put a difficult focus on it. But then again, they've then said that they're going. What is it? The next one's going to be the Derby. Is that right? That they've said.
Yes, yeah. But you know, I mean, how long you can carry on disrupting races without it kind of the media getting bored of the same thing? It's like another question, isn't it?
Oh well, they'll always have that problem because you always do. You know, I mean, the media will demand that you do something more. And you've got if you want to help the suffering of other animals. Well, we've got the principal ones. Do you want to have a look at that, or do you think we've said it all?
It's not just about the suffering; it's about the oppression of animals. I would want to say there, because it isn't just about suffering.
Yeah, well, they're being very careful with what they say, aren't they?
Well, this is a message that's aimed at the people they want to come and support them. You see, and so, you know, those people would understand what oppression meant.
And they won't even say vegan in this kind of statement.
And speed up the transition to a plant-based food system. Well, what you want to do is we need to create we need to have like a vegan run society, really, an animal liberationist society, basically, and with that you'd get a plant-based food system, and plus a lot of other other forms of animal oppression being brought to an end. That's what we need. I mean, yeah, we do need a plant-based food system. Yes, absolutely. But it's but the two are okay. You know, the two are okay. It's just that it's kind of really the word suffering that I'm, because suffering
not necessarily.
isn't.
I mean, in the sense of the plant-based food system, the focus is on things like institutions. There, isn't it? Getting schools.
Getting schools and that, you see, to do things, and that's okay. I'm not opposed to that, but you see, you know, you're going to be limited with that, unless you educate a lot more people to go vegan. Because if you look at like the plant-based treaty, which I think, you know, animal rights are very kind of involved in that, or have been involved in that. There's save movements involved in that. Is that you know, you've got a few local authorities have adopted the plant-based treaty, but like it seems to me that most of the local authorities that have adopted, if not all of them, are progressive. I don't think any of them are like conservative-dominated local authorities that have adopted the plant-based treaty. So once again, if you want to get that plant-based treaty widely accepted, you've got to change the political representatives. You've got to change the politicians, because otherwise you're going to have politicians there that aren't going to adopt it. So once again, and how do you change the politicians? You know, how do you get like more vegans elected?
But even on the practical level, do you remember that? I mean, this completely supports your position there. Do you remember that time when Jamie Oliver tried to get more healthy eating in school cafeterias, and then you ended up with this rebellion from the parents? And there was this irony that there was one school which was next to a graveyard, and what they would do is the parents would go, and the kids would, you know, during break, as it were, the kids would come over and give them their order from the fast food restaurant. They would piss off to the restaurant and get all the burgers and hot dogs and everything else, and then come back at lunchtime, and then they would be feeding in all this junk food to the kids from the grounds of the graveyard, with, you know, with no kind of irony whatsoever, right? And so there you had a situation where somebody tried to change the system, but the people had not been changed.
Because they hadn't changed, because they hadn't changed the culture. Yeah, hadn't changed the culture.
And so they rebelled. They rebelled against the system change.
Yeah. And this is why you have to have in order to create system change, you have to have individual change. You know, you have to change the culture, and that you only do that through changing people as individuals. Yeah, you got to change a lot of people as individuals, but it's still individual change.
Well, just to end with, then let's put this up here, because you might quite like this. I can change the color on this.
There's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff in these principles, but there are a couple of things that kind of.
I think we're going to have to put it down to that view there. But in terms of this one here, again, they'll put food first. That's pretty good, right? So we have a vision of a safe and secure future for all, a future where no other animals are exploited, whether for food, fun, or any other purpose. So that is a good opening statement, right? You wouldn't quibble with that, would you? And then it goes in farming and fishing, exactly what you wanted.
That's where I think their actions should be focused on that.
Yeah, and in the next one, you've got farming and fishing. Unfortunately, then it's talking about suffering again. And so, you see, I wonder whether the culture is still so speciesist that people think, oh, that means free range. Oh, that means grass-fed.
Yeah,
oh,
it should be where the greatest number of animals are slaughtered. You know.
But I'm on about but it's on about the suffering again, isn't it?
Suffering, yeah.
So, okay, let's move to this one then. I had to move that over. My own sound effects, folks. Where We have a duty to openly and non-violently challenge our broken system. So that's that claims making that you don't like again, Ronnie.
Well, about the system, yeah, because it's like, like I said, if something's broken, it means that at one time it was okay. And I don't believe it ever was. We need something that we've never had before, not to go back to repair something from the past that's been broken.
Yeah. And then you've got the big challenge to your position. Non-violence involves targeting systems doing harm, not people doing harm. Being accountable for the actions we take, which is a contradiction in terms, even within that sentence. You're not talking about challenging people doing harm, but then you talk being accountable. So who's being accountable?
Well, you see, the thing is that the system doesn't exist separately from people as individuals. It isn't something that's been imposed from the sky. The system, has been created out of the way that people behave as individuals and how people interact one with another as individuals. That's what's made up the system. There's kind of nothing in a sense. There isn't anything beyond the individual and individual morality. There isn't really anything in reality beyond that, and it's just the way people kind of operate, together, I suppose, in a sense. But everyone's morally responsible for their own actions. We must not remove that from people. We must not remove from people individual moral responsibility for their own actions and blame it on some kind of system. What is that system? Some sort of ephemeral thing called.
It sounds like they want the system to be held accountable, but not individuals, right?
But there isn't a system. There isn't a system that's separate from individuals. There isn't a system that's over there that's separate from individuals. We are the system. We're all kind of part of the system. Like it's like the government. The government. The horrific government we've got at the moment wasn't imposed from the sky. They were voted in. They're voted in by about 29% of the people eligible to vote. Which is by no means a majority, but like they were voted in.
Well, it might be imposed from the sky because Rupert Murdoch would have had something to do with it.
Well, yes, yeah, and along with the other media moguls that kind of
But the bottom part of it is very Gandhian again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Stay humble, accept suffering without retaliation, remain peaceful in our spirit, words, and deeds. Old Steve Best wouldn't like that, would he?
Well, I think in terms of non-violence as a strategy, I think you can use non-violence. I'm not a pacifist, and I think that there are times when you have to use force. But I think non-violence can be used as a strategy, and I think like in terms of like if you're sort of sending out a message to the public, if you're there fighting people, it doesn't send out a very good message to the public, does it?
Yeah, I know that, Ronnie. But I mean, if the Saudis had this, but they'd all be in hospital.
Yeah, but that's a different thing. You see, it's like it depends. That's why I'm saying it's non-violence as a strategy. It's non-violent. It's not non-violent. I don't think non-violence. I don't accept non-violence as like a principle of life. Because I think there are times when you have to intervene and you'd have to use force. And I think all Sabs should be trained in martial arts, and that as soon as someone attacks them, they should know that not to attack a Sab, else you get what for. That's what I think.
Yeah. Okay. So here's their rationale then to answer your position, right? We understand fundamental shifts in our society are required, not just for the other animals, but for people to thrive as well. Yeah, whilst individual, personal, and spiritual transformations are an important part of this, alone they are not enough. But nobody said that, did they? Alone, only. That's not what's being said. That seems to be a contradiction. Rather, we must move people, culture, and structures at a systemic level if we are to create the necessary societal.
But then how do you? Change. But you see, if you're going to change things at a systemic level, that comes down to people as individuals. Because say you're going to want to change the government, it's people as individuals that are going down the polling station and put a cross on a piece of paper next to a particular name. So it's down to you have to change those people as individuals You know, if you want to change the system, if we want to radically change, you know, the kind of, you know, who's in control of things, so that you know, societies becomes radically different, and we move towards animal liberation. We have to have different politicians. And how do you get them? You get them through individual actions, don't you? You get them through the individual action of a voter, right? So you do have to change people, as in you do have to change the mindsets of people at an individual level. And so if you educate someone to go vegan, you're, you know, like, I mean, like properly vegan, not just in terms of diet, but like in terms of like that, you know, they believe in animal liberation. But like the diet's a good starting point, because that, you know, as I said before, that's a major way in which people contribute to the oppression of other animals, and it's also a major that's a major identifier in someone's life. So if someone changes their diet, they're likely to kind of they're likely to question other things as well. You know, so that's you know, that's once you get people over that hurdle, you've done something really, really major. And so you can't have system change without individual change. I don't see how that's possible. The system doesn't exist separately to individuals.
We do this by positively envisaging what can be achieved, rather than getting weighed down by all that is wrong. So their envisioned future is what can be achieved. So they think that they can, within a society which is deeply culturally specialist, they can end the Grand National.
Well, the thing is that you see the problem is that if you're kind of doing direct action as awareness raising, and to me the awareness raising should be to raise awareness in people so that they go vegan, right? So you change people fundamentally as individuals, and then through changing those people as individuals, that thereby you change the system, you change the culture, and you change the system, right? And for me, that's the only way you can ever do it. It's the only way you can ever do it. So the action,
this to me, Ronnie, is very dangerous. This one sentence here. What we do this positively envisioning what can be achieved, because they're suggesting that the Grand National could be brought to an end, or what would normally end up to appease everybody is that they'll start looking, as they've done already, at all the changes that can be made to the fences and the amount of other horses running and this kind of stuff. So all these welfare things will be tried to be at least suggested in order to mitigate that. And so if there's a lot of the public going, yeah, we've got a problem with the Grand National, they'll come up with all these kind of welfare measures, which they've already mentioned already.
They've already. I mean, the Grand National is by far not the most dangerous steeplechase, because there's been so much focus on it that they have already taken measures to make it safer. And there are, you know, I think there are more horses killed at other courses other than Aintree, for instance. I don't think Aintree is the worst in the country for horses being killed.
Remember, I mentioned, you know, I was wondering whether they've taken some advice from people like Leonard and Melanie Joy, because this last sentence is totally Melanie Joy. We should avoid blaming and shaming individuals. Well, right? But I mean, that's not what vegan education is about.
No, I mean, I think it's counterproductive to blame and shame people as individuals, but it's not counterproductive to say that we all as individuals bear individual responsibility. You know, we all bear individual moral responsibility.
Yeah, but you see, when you say that to people, that's not shaming them, is it?
That's not shaming them. No, that's just what we all. That's just a given. Like we all do. You can't say, "Oh, well, you can do something and you're not responsible for your own actions."
This has been a fault line since Melanie Joy's husband was given a talk at the Animal Rights conference in Luxembourg, and at the time he was the director of the German Vegetarian Society, and they had products which were 70-odd% made out of birds' eggs. And so some activists jumped on the stage and kind of grabbed the mic and made a statement against him being at an animal rights conference. And ever since then, Joy has said that, you know, vegans shouldn't shame other vegans, but it's not about shaming.
No, it's
it's not about shaming when you talk to the public either.
No, it's not. It's that we're all But you see, this has come over from Extinction Rebellion. This is an Extinction Rebellion thing, isn't it? That this thing about system change, not individual change. This is an Extinction Rebellion thing. And yeah, you see that in Extinction Rebellion. I mean, I went to they had a thing in London called the Big One, where it was a big event up in London where there's 60,000 people, I think. There's people from Animal Rising there as well, and different organisations.
I thought the big one in London was a bell.
Yeah. Well, no, that's Big Ben. That is. That's Big Ben. But it was right near Big Ben where everyone was gathered, actually. So it was a big one.
Yeah, well, Big Ben is the bell. It's not the clock.
Oh, Big Ben's the bell. Oh, yeah. Right. I didn't know that. I know something. I know something now that I never knew. Well, anyway, it was near the clock that houses the Big Ben bell, and going up. We went 2 days. Lewis and I went 2 days running and went on a coach each time. And, you kind of can't help but overhear some of the conversations on the coach. And people were talking about, I eat deer because I regard that as more sustainable. And people were talking about what food they ate. And people were on there like eating animal products and all that. So like, once again, yeah, it doesn't matter. I can consume all these animal products that I kind of know, because like they all know by now that animal farming, contributes to the climate crisis. But nevertheless, I don't have to make any individual change in relation to that. I can carry on eating me ham sandwich. I can carry on, having me yogurt, dairy yogurt, and I can carry on, doing, eating fish and all that stuff, because individual change doesn't matter. And we need this kind of system change, this kind of system, whatever that is, to change.
I don't agree with this from Andy. They're conscious of the shaming. I don't think shaming is involved with education. It's just the imparting of information that people don't know. So if you were to as a vegan say to a vegetarian, did you know about X detail of the dairy on egg industry? You're giving them information that might create change, but there's no shaming involved. It's just giving them information that they might not have. I think where the shaming is, if you go, you're an animal abuser, I think that's shaming, not giving them information. It's the words that go with the info.
But, I mean, I think people can feel a sense of guilt, in that, like, if they learn that what they're doing,
But is that shaming?
It's not shaming, no. It's people feel, and of course, it's that sense of guilt that causes the kickback against, vegan educators, doesn't it? Because you've kind of what you presented with people, because they feel it's made them feel guilty. Then often their reaction can be like aggressive, can't it? Because you've made them feel uncomfortable. But that isn't shaming. You've not gone out to actually shame them. You've not accused them of anything. It's just what you presented them with makes them feel that within themselves.
Yeah, but you see, that part of it, if you want to characterize that as shaming, it's unavoidable, because if people are given information that they didn't know, and then they feel shame, there's nothing much you can do with that. But
no, you're not deliberately shaming them, but you've got to give people.
There's no shame in not knowing something.
Yeah, no. I mean, and you're not going to educate people unless you do give them some sort of information. But were there any more on that of those?
I'm sure there was. Let me put it back up for you, Ronnie. Okay, let's go. I've got a switch for this particular one. I've got a switch screen. So here we go. Can you see that? Okay, probably not the top of it. There, 4. Okay. This means actively working to create welcoming, accessible spaces, looking after one another and ourselves, building our resilience, avoiding jargon. I'm not quite sure where that comes in, but I mean, I like the first few lines. Taking time to reflect and learn. Well, that's good. That's very good. Being kind of, if you like, a moral audit of your work, reflexivity. That's very good. Challenging ourselves and one another. Accepting constructive criticism, as we believe that this show is doing that, right? So we would claim that that's what it was doing. consciously improving every day, assuming good faith in interactions, resolving conflict when it arises, managing workloads. I mean, this is almost like their internal kind of memo type thing.
Yeah. I mean, and all that's very good, really, isn't it? That's kind of like this it kind of is a sort of caring community, really, and I think they kind of
that last sentence is great because see this working collaboratively for the good of the community without expectation of compensation.
Yes,
that was expressed by Leslie Cross. It's a giving without a getting. He said.
And all that's very good. And like I said, at the beginning, that how they, how inclusive they are in trying to enable, people with disabilities, for instance, to take part in. They even have people to do sign language for deaf people and all that kind of stuff. So it's like really, really inclusive, and that's a really, really good aspect of it. Like the kind of, caring for the people that kind of are involved in it. Which historically isn't something that's been done a lot. I don't think the ALF did very much of that, did we?
Well, it'd be difficult to have sign language within the ALF.
Yeah, it'd be difficult. Yeah, I think we only had.
Kind of. Put on your balaclava. I mean.
Yeah, that's right. But in terms of like that kind of, but it's probably because it's a more open organisation. It would have been difficult for us to do anything like that because, like, there was like secrecy, a lot of secrecy involved because. People would be facing, long sentences for what they did. So it kind of made it be very difficult.
Now, this bit we found a bit weird. I was shamed by this box. We embrace collaboration with those who share similar values and seek reconciliation with those who may not. We stand alongside other groups striving for justice, including climate campaigners, animal rights advocates, striking workers, Indigenous communities, and more, which seem to us to suggest that they don't see themselves as animal rights advocates.
Well, unless they mean it as other animal rights advocates. But yeah, it could be. It could be they see themselves separate. But you see, a lot of people that are involved in animal rights, like the grassroots. They are animal rights advocates. They are animal rights advocates. They'll be doing like, they'll do an animal rising thing one week, and then the next week they'll be like,
well, strictly speaking, if you're concerned about striking workers, that's an animal rights action too, isn't it? Because the striking workers are technically animals. It doesn't say other animal rights advocates.
Yeah.
Or the advocates of other animals. But I mean, that's just a technical thing. In the animal justice space, we applaud those striving for liberation in their own way, including the non-human animals who fight for their own freedom each and every day. So that's an interesting one.
Yes.
Because there was a website, wasn't there, about animal kind of resistance, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Here we occupy our own niche, using non-violent direct action to achieve systemic, cultural, and personal transformation. So how does that one fit with what they said before? Except that, they obviously put systemic, and this is interesting now, because from your point of view, if you want to change the culture, you go for the personal transformations, which will then change the culture. They're suggesting systemic alterations will change the culture. I think it's the other way around. I agree with you on this.
Come here. I've been disrupted by Jazz. If people think she looks rather strange, and she's shaved quite a lot of her fur shaved because she had to scan. She's got a very, very rare disease, and she had to have a scan.
So I thought she wanted to look like you. That's right.
That's why she's all shaved. Yeah. That's just to say we don't kind of shave our cats and do weird things. It was done by the vet.
So we've got cultural change in the middle of these two ideas, systemic and personal. So in terms of
it's the wrong way around. It should be personal, cultural, and then and then systemic, because that's the way around it. That's how
that's the way it is. It's got to work, hasn't it? Yeah. But it doesn't mean that it can't all be done at once. It's just that in terms of where you start, it would have to be the personal transformation. So that's your kind of biggest gripe with them, really, as a group, I suppose.
Well, yes, I think the fact that they don't mention vegan, and they're not saying what people can do as individuals, through becoming vegan. I think that's always been a concern I've had, with the messaging.
Yeah. Now, the last sentence will not go down well with animals only people. We seek common ground and reconciliation through dialogue with farming and fishing communities, many of whom increasingly face struggles of their own under the existing system and from our deepening climate and ecological crisis. So a lot of animals only people would really push back at that sentence, I think.
Yes. I mean, obviously, we want the people in the farming and fishing communities to stop animal farming and to stop fishing.
Yeah, but the animals only people might say, we don't care what happens to them.
Well, I think they do. I think in reality, how that would come about is that you would have, if you're wanting to, I mean, obviously, the more people who become vegan, the less support there are going to be for those industries, and those industries would kind of diminish anyway. But at the end of the day, you'd probably need some sort of government intervention to hasten that change. That would inevitably involve helping those people to do something else instead of animal farming and fishing, wouldn't it? So that would be that may be where a dialogue would
what do you think of this headline for number 5, Ronnie?
Yeah, it's interesting talking about that. There was a guy, an example of that kind of thing. There was I remember watching it was like a kind of webinar that was run by the Veganic Network, and there was a guy came on there who was a dairy farmer, and he said, I'm interested in changing to the veganic farming, and I want to give up my dairy farm. And there was a veganic farmer on there said, well, look, I'll help you. I'll come to your farm and I'll help you and talk you through the practicalities of how you can change. And that was going back like 2 or 3 years. And then I think might have been end of last year, there was another webinar, and this farmer was back on there, and his farm now was completely veganic. His dairy herd had gone to an animal sanctuary, but he was helped. He was helped through dialogue with someone who was vegan. Through the practicalities of like creating that change. And I think that's important. It is important to do things like that.
Yes. Just checking on me on me smasher likes, but they've all been done. So thank you everybody for doing that.
Deb's asking where Abby is. Abby's one of our other cats. This one was.
She's in the church. She's in the church. Ha 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 ha.
Abbey. Yeah, Westminster Abbey. Yeah, she's in London. Yeah.
Yeah, she's gone to see the King.
Well, I hope not. Unless
you're going to get back in your place. So,
maybe.
Right. We're coming up to 1 3/4 hours. So I think we ought to. This has gone on a bit too long, but I think we do need, and I think we probably want to just reiterate that this is not an attack, Ronnie.
No. And I think the only reason why I've said what I've said is because I kind of think this sort of huge potential for animal rising. I think that type of direct action is really important and could be really important in as part of the process of creating meaningful change. And so when you see something that's kind of got the potential to be so good, it does make you more concerned about the areas where you kind of don't feel you don't feel totally happy about the messaging or whatever. And that's why it does come from a position of support. It does come from a position of solidarity. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, they are doing something. It
comes from a position of love, Ronnie.
Well, no. I mean, I tend not, I prefer respect. I prefer solidarity. I prefer justice. I prefer those words to the word love, to be honest.
It comes from a position of coochie coochie coo. We love you.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing. No, I'm not like.
Hey, Ronnie, do you ever think about, because the major advantage of the direct action now compared with then is the fact that it's deliberately aimed at kind of awareness raising, as you've said.
Well,
do you ever think about what it would have been if that had been the same back then?
I mean, first of all, I think, in terms of actions, say like the animal rebellion actions, for instance, I think that I think there kind of was this idea, and certainly I think it was the idea with Extinction Rebellion, and obviously Animal Rebellion came out of that. The idea that somehow these actions could put pressure on the government to bring in change. So I think the number one aim really wasn't awareness raising; it was pressurizing the government, which isn't.
Wouldn't they say that they're the same thing?
Well, they might do, but I see them.
You wouldn't agree with it. Neither would I. See them they might say that, might they?
There's all these people causing trouble. They're blocking up London. They're making a big fuss. We need to change things. We need to kind of, move a bit in the direction they want us to move. It's kind of a bit like protests. Why did, like, I think it was as many as 2 million people. Why did 2 million people march in London against Britain's involvement in the Iraq War, when Tony Blair was about to join the USA in attacking Iraq way back, wasn't it? I don't know when that was. Is it 20 years ago or whatever? Why did 2 million people march in London against that? It was to put pressure on the government to change that policy. Of course, it made no difference, as often these demonstrations do make no difference. But it was that to exert pressure, and I think that that seems to me to have been the main aim of Extinction Rebellion and Animal Rebellion. But the problem with that is what's come out of that isn't any change. What comes out of that is like draconian legislation to curtail protest. So that's what's come out of that, and so the kind of naivety of thinking that you can move a deeply entrenched, hardline right-wing neoliberal governments into doing anything decent. It's like it's just it's just crazy, really, to imagine that will make any difference to this government, and of course it hasn't.
Well,
and
also
so
in terms of
you have to adopt
outreach. You can't imagine them ever. You can't really imagine them ever outlawing vegan outreach.
No, they're not going to outlaw. Well, I think they might like to outlaw for vegan outreach. I think it would be difficult for them to do so, which is why it's it's kind of such an easy and important thing for people to do. But you see, but putting pressure on the existing government to bring in changes is not system change. What you're trying to do is force the existing system to make changes. That isn't system change. System change is getting rid of those people and replacing them with something else. That's kind of system change, or that is more in line with system change. And of course, that's kind of, I see that as the only way of doing it. You're never going to get anything from this lot that's in government.
Their line of reasoning, Ronnie, would be, well, we're not talking about replacing every farmer. We're talking about getting them to change. That'd be their reasoning there, wouldn't it?
Yeah, with the farmers, but with a politician who's wedded to is deeply wedded to a particular ideology, you're not going to change.
So are the farmers.
Well, no. I think with the farmers, it's more. Often it's a practical consideration. That often farmers, they're often family farmers. Something that's been held in the family and been passed down from generation to generation, and that's the only way of living they know. You see, and I think if they can be educated, well, there's a different way that you can use your
that's
land.
the only way that they know to be politicians, kind of supporting their mates, scamming the public, and getting them to bail out.
Well, with the existing lot of politicians, yes, I think that I think that's very true, and I think it's kind of different. I think with a farmer that there's a more practical aspect of, is okay if I don't know how to do anything else, and so I need to be kind of helped and taught to do something else, and shown how to use my land differently, perhaps, and I think that if farmers were offered that a lot of them would go with it. Whereas I think if you've got like a politician that's deeply entrenched in a particular ideology, like the ones in the existing government are, you're never going to move them from that. So you have to replace them, and to replace them, you've got to educate. To replace them with the right sort of people, to replace them with vegans, which is ideally what we want to do, you've got to educate a lot more people to be vegan. Otherwise, that's never going to happen.
Okay,
and so it's like,
given what you said, Ronnie, just to end, because we need to wrap this up. Given what you said, would you say that the claims making about animal lovers, that's one thing, and their focus on system change rather than individual change, if they could switch, if they would go, okay, we'll change one of those, which one would it be?
Well, it's kind of, that's a difficult question, isn't it?
Well, it'll be the individual, wouldn't it?
I think it would be to the individual change one. Yes, yeah. I think because that would have more of an impact, and to talk about veganism, because it's a brilliant tool for vegan education. It's a brilliant tool for vegan education. You're doing these actions.
Yeah. So the animal lover thing is an irritation. The
more so, yes. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, and the system change, individual change is kind of more fundamental. But I think also that as I said, maybe I'd like to see them become more autonomous. I mean, they've got regional groups and they've got like a national structure. But you see, maybe become more autonomous than that, and have kind of small, more localized groups that are like free to carry out their own actions, provided they go along with like the principles of animal rising. So you get a lot of kind of smaller groups doing stuff in their own areas that will get local publicity, and that's that's valuable, because like thousands and thousands of people read local newspapers. So that could be another way in which they could kind of expand, their impact.
Oh, I think Deb's got an interesting point here, and I think it's probably relevant to just about everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's becoming
corporations, and they also kind of just buy the politicians. I mean, that's
and I think that's becoming more of the case over here as well.
I mean, politicians are for sale, aren't they? So
the politicians are enthralled to those farmers because, well, if they're large corporations, they're going to be enthralled to them anyway. Certainly, the type of government we've got over here, and it would be the same in most countries. And I mean, certainly.
But then you've got the political power of the farmers as well. I mean, most governments are scared stiff of the farmers.
Scared stiff of the farmers, yeah. I mean, the reason we've got the badger cull is because farmers want to kill badgers, and so the government said, right, we'll kind of make up something so you can kill badgers.
Yeah, I mean, they even kind of ignore science.
They ignore science. The badger cull's done for two reasons. First of all, because to please farmers that just want to kill anything that they can't make money out of, and secondly, it's also to do with like property developers, because if you have badgers on land, you kind of can't build on it until you've got to entice those badgers away. In other words, you've got to create, like another set for them somewhere else to entice them away. I don't think you can physically remove them because they're a protected species. So if you can clear badgers from a piece of land by pretending that they cause bovine TB and that they can be shot.
It's so ironic, isn't it? They're killing a protected species.
Oh yeah, that's why they need licenses. think it's Natural England issues the license.
Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, I think.
That's a bit of a tangent, but like,
yeah.
It's
so what we're saying is that, you know, this is not an attack on AR at all. It's
no,
just
no, it's not. No, I mean fundamentally, this you know, this, and what you got to remember is you know, at least these people are doing something. You know, they're doing something to try and, you know,
that's a fair point as well, of course.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, they're doing something to try and, you know, protect animals, and you know, when we consider, like, especially, you know, that most people aren't doing that. In fact, most people are causing harm to other animals, you know, through eating them, and, you know, sometimes through other ways as well. You know, so most people in society aren't doing anything, and even amongst people who are vegans, you know, most vegans don't, apart from just like consuming a vegan diet, they're not doing anything active to protect other animals either. So, you know, in animal rights, they've got seen in that context that, like, you know, that most people aren't, you know, aren't doing anything active at all to protect other animals.
So there is that they are doing something.
Yeah, and I think that's, you can say the same about anyone who's taking action for other, even though we might, you know, we might sort of have something to say about some of the things they do, or something to say about their messaging. At the end of the day, at least they're doing something, and that's vitally important. But it's only because I'm such a big kind of supporter of animal rights in that I am concerned about.
Do you want to answer Colleen's question? Having banished animal lover from my vocabulary, may I call myself a keen, avid animal respecter, admirer, and warm appreciator?
You could do. That's quite a mouthful, isn't it? To say that. But yes, I think you could say that.
Yeah, you wouldn't get it on your T-shirt too well either, would you?
It wouldn't really fit. It'd be very small.
Yeah,
people couldn't
read.
Your
challenge, Colleen, is to come up with a T-shirt that says all that. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, so, that someone can read.
That'd be quite good.
But so, yes, and you know, it's, you know, it's done out of, you know, big, because this is a, you know, as I said, it's a really, I think, a really important development for our movement. You know what they're doing, and it's just
so it's not an attack on them. And next week we'll be back to not attack somebody else. And so and we'll do that, of course, Ronnie, if
we are both still alive.